My parents said they couldn't afford to buy me a winter coat, and a week later bought matching jackets for their real family. My stepmom laughed and said, "Try not to freeze, sweetheart." I stayed silent. Months later, they needed a place to stay. I said, "It's cold outside, isn't it?" And then my dad. "I just thought maybe you'd understand," my dad said over the phone. His voice was thin. Tired. I paused. Understand what? That people fall on hard times. The words felt like snow hitting my skin, soft at first, then melting into cold that settles deep. I stared out the window at the gray sky outside. Snowflakes were already drifting down. "Do you remember the winter I was 15? He was silent. "Never mind," I said. "I hope you figure things out." I hung up. When I was 15, I asked my dad if we could go shopping for a new coat. My old one was too tight, and the zipper didn't work anymore. He sighed, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and said something about money being tight. I nodded, because I was used to disappointment. I didn't cry when I left the room. I didn't cry when I walked to the bus stop the next morning wearing a hoodie and 3 layers underneath it. I didn't cry when my fingers burned from the wind. Crying never helped anything in that house. A week later, I came home from school and heard laughter from the living room. It wasn't a joyful sound. It was high-pitched and exclusive, the kind of laughter that says, "You're not a part of this." I walked in and saw them, my stepmom, Marla, and her 2 daughters, Anika and Bree. All 3 of them were in shiny new jackets, the kind that puffed out and looked warm enough to sleep in. The tags were still on the sleeves. They were matching, plum-colored with fur-lined hoods. My dad was standing in the doorway, holding a mug, smiling. They looked like a real family. Marla turned to me. "Try not to freeze, sweetheart." It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. The fake concern. The tiny curl in her lip that said she liked watching me flinch. I didn't say anything. I walked upstairs. I shut the door. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. I had learned by then that staying quiet was safer. Marla moved in with us just a few months after the divorce was finalized. At first, I thought she was just overwhelmed. Trying to blend 2 families is never easy, right? But over time, I saw it clearly, she didn't want a blended family. She wanted her own, and I wasn't part of it. She never yelled. She never hit. It was worse than that. She left me out of things on purpose. Forgot to tell me when dinner was ready. Threw out leftovers before I got home from school. Excluded me from family outings and made it sound like I was the one who didn't want to go. I'd find out about ice skating trips from photos on the fridge. And my dad? He just watched. When I asked him once, just once, why he let her treat me like that, he mumbled something about keeping the peace. I understood what that meant. It meant that I was disposable, so long as she stayed happy. That winter was rough. Upstate New York doesn't care about your feelings. The cold slices right through you. I layered sweaters and hoodies and tried not to shiver too visibly. A teacher at school, Mrs. Gentry, eventually noticed and offered me her old coat from home. I told her my dad was going to get one next week. He wasn't. She brought the coat anyway. I accepted it in silence. I still remember how warm it felt, how alien that warmth was, like something I didn't deserve. I got a job the minute I could, weekends at a greasy spoon diner where truckers called me kid and tipped in crumpled singles. I saved everything. I didn't go to prom. I didn't buy yearbooks. Every dollar went into a shoebox. My only plan was escape. By 18, I was out. SUNY Albany gave me a partial scholarship. I worked at night, studied during the day, and ignored every call from home. They stopped trying after a while. And honestly, I was fine with that. I was used to the cold. Over the years, I built something. A life. A quiet apartment, a degree, a stable job in billing support for a health group. Eventually, I met someone, Jonah. He was quiet and thoughtful, nothing like my father. He didn't say much, but when he did, it mattered. We moved in together in a 2-bedroom house just outside Troy. It was the kind of place that smelled like fresh paint and laundry detergent. It felt like safety. Then, one November morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. When I finally listened, it was my dad. He said they'd been evicted. Marla had lost her job. He'd had surgery and couldn't work. They were living in a motel near Amsterdam but were running out of money. He sounded worn out, scared. Said he didn't know where else to go. He asked if they could stay with me for just a couple weeks. I listened to the message 3 times. I didn't respond for 2 days. When I finally called, he picked up on the first ring. He was too eager, his voice cracking with forced optimism. "I really appreciate you calling back," he said. "I just thought maybe you'd understand. We're in a rough spot." I stared out the window at the first snow of the season. "It's cold outside, isn't it?" I said. He didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch before asking, "Do you remember when I asked for a winter coat?" There was a pause. "That was a long time ago, Nora." "Not for me," I said. He didn't argue. "You told me there wasn't enough money, and then bought matching jackets for Marla and her girls. You watched me go to school in a hoodie while they posed in the snow." He sighed. "I was trying to make things work. I didn't always get it right." I swallowed a wave of something I couldn't quite name. "No. You didn't." There was a long, empty space on the line. Then, "I'm sorry." I believed him. That was the strangest part. I really did. But believing him didn't mean I had to open my door. I told him I needed time to think about it. That was true. Not because I didn't know my answer, but because I needed to sit with the weight of it. To fully allow myself the space to consider the child I was, and the woman I had become. That evening, I told Jonah everything. He knew pieces of the story, but not the details. Not about the coat. Not about the way Marla had made me invisible in my own house. Not about the quiet complicity my father offered in exchange for domestic calm. He listened the way he always did, patiently, without interruption. His hand didn't leave mine once. "So," he said gently when I finished, "do you want them here?" That was the simplest question, and the hardest. "I don't," I said. "Not because I want revenge, but because I built something real here. Something safe. I can't risk that for people who never gave a damn when I was a child." "You don't owe anyone an explanation," he said. "Especially not them." I knew he was right. But I still couldn't shake the guilt. That familiar, low-burning shame that somehow, even now, I was being selfish. I let a few more days pass. Snow piled up outside. I baked banana bread I didn't eat. Cleaned the baseboards. Sat in my office pretending to work. Then a letter arrived. Postmarked from Amsterdam. The envelope was pink and smelled faintly like cheap perfume. "Marla." I opened it on the porch, as if afraid of what might come out of it. It was short. No more than 3 paragraphs. She said she was shocked and hurt that I would ignore a family emergency. She said it wasn't her fault that money was tight back then and that I was choosing bitterness over compassion. She wrote that I was turning into a cold, hard woman, just like your mother. I folded the letter slowly, pressed the creases with my thumbs, and slid it back into the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was tired. Tired of being expected to mother the adults who had failed me. Tired of pretending that forgiveness was owed, just because years had passed. 3 days later, a second letter arrived. Same return address, but this time it was my father's handwriting on the envelope. I knew it before I opened it. The way he wrote my name, plain, blocky letters, no flourish. This one was different. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't mention Marla. He didn't try to guilt me or twist the story. He simply said he was sorry. Sorry for what he didn't see. For what he chose not to see. For not stepping in. For choosing peace over protection. I thought I was doing the best I could, he wrote. But I understand now that doing your best means protecting your child, even if it costs you comfort. He ended the letter with, I don't expect anything from you. I just want you to know that I see it all now. And I wish I had done better. I read it twice. Then a third time. And I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I let myself cry. It wasn't a sobbing, dramatic kind of cry. It was quiet. Gentle. A release. I didn't call him back. Not yet. But for the first time in years, I felt the cold loosening its grip. A few weeks passed. The holidays crept in. Jonah's sister invited us to spend Christmas with their family in Saratoga Springs. It was warm, chaotic, filled with mismatched ornaments and board games and loud cousins. I brought a bottle of wine. Jonah made his famous potatoes. They hugged me like I'd been there every year. That night, lying beside him under flannel sheets, I told him about the letter. Do you think he meant it? He asked softly. I think he did, I said. But it doesn't mean I have to let him back in. He nodded. I just needed to hear it. To know that I wasn't imagining everything. You weren't. A week later, my phone buzzed. A new voicemail. Nora, it's Dad again. Just wanted to say thank you for reading the letter, if you did. We're figuring things out. Got some help from the church. Staying in a shelter for now. Marla's not happy, but it is what it is. Anyway. I know you're busy. Just wanted to say I love you. I didn't know what to do with that. With I love you. It sat like a pebble in my chest. Not painful, exactly. Just present. I didn't return that call either. I didn't block him. But I didn't reach back. Instead, I returned to work after the holidays. Life resumed. Jonah and I started talking about getting a dog. I took up baking again, this time actually eating the bread. I went on long walks alone, sometimes in the snow, bundled in the thick wool coat I bought for myself. Every time I zipped it up, I thought about that other winter. About a little girl in too thin sleeves, watching a woman laugh in her brand new jacket. I thought about how far that girl had come. And how, sometimes, protecting yourself means refusing to open the door, even when someone is standing in the cold. The rest of winter came and went without another word from my father. No letters. No calls. The silence didn't hurt the way I'd expected, it was more like a quiet you notice when a machine stops running after humming in the background for years. It was peaceful. But still, my mind wandered sometimes. Not with guilt exactly, more like curiosity. Wondering what it meant to receive a real apology from someone who once stood back and watched you get cut out of your own life. Wondering what it would mean to accept it. Or to reject it. Or to just let it sit there, unanswered. Spring brought small changes. I started running again, just a few blocks at a time in the chilly mornings. Jonah and I planted bulbs along the edge of the backyard. My work picked up. I got invited to join a leadership cohort in my company, and I accepted. Life was moving forward, steadily, just like I wanted. Then one afternoon, while I was on a Zoom call, my phone lit up. Jonah answered from the living room. A minute later, he poked his head in and mouthed, "It's your dad." I blinked. Held up a finger. Finished the call like normal. Smiled, thanked my coworker, clicked end, and then just sat there staring at the leave meeting screen. I didn't call back that day. Or the next. 2 days later, he called again. Left another voicemail. Hey, Nora. I know it's been a while. I wasn't gonna call again, but I thought you should know, we're moving out of the shelter. Got a little subsidized place outside Johnstown. It's small, but it's something. I'm starting PT next week. Anyway, I know things aren't simple between us. I just wanted to let you know we're okay. That was it. No pressure. No mention of Marla. No request for help. I listened to it 3 times before deleting it. Not because I was angry. Just because I didn't know what I was supposed to do with it. A few weeks later, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years. It was at the farmer's market in downtown Troy. I was at the honey stall, talking to the vendor about wildflower versus clover, when someone behind me said, "Nora?" I turned and saw a woman with a silver braid and warm eyes. Mrs. Gentry. It took me a second to place her. She'd aged, more lines around her mouth, thinner frame, but she still had the same calm energy. The same gentle voice. "Mrs. Gentry?" I asked, almost laughing. She smiled wide and pulled me into a hug. "You look so well," she said. "So grown." We caught up for a while, standing there with canvas bags in hand, surrounded by the scent of tomatoes and basil. I told her I lived nearby, worked in healthcare, had a partner. "I always hoped you got out of that house," she said softly. "You deserved so much more than how they treated you." I nodded. My throat caught a little, but I kept my voice steady. "I did get out." "I'm proud of you," she said. "I don't know if anyone's ever said that to you, but I am." She said it with such certainty that I felt tears rise before I could stop them. "Thank you," I whispered. We hugged again. And just like that, she was gone, fading into the crowd like some gentle ghost from my childhood. It wasn't a big moment. But it cracked something open in me. Something old and quiet that I had locked away for years. That night, I sat with Jonah on the porch. We were sharing a bottle of wine, the string lights humming above us, soft jazz playing from the open window. "I saw Mrs. Gentry today," I said. He smiled. "You've mentioned her before, right? The coat lady?" I laughed. "Yeah. The coat lady. She was always kind to you. She saved me in ways no one else noticed." We were quiet for a while, sipping, watching the evening settle in. Then Jonah asked, "Do you think you'll ever talk to your dad again?" I shrugged. "Maybe. I don't know." He didn't press. "But if I do," I said slowly, "it'll be on my terms. No Marla. No guilt. Just 2 people who understand that you don't always get second chances. And sometimes, you don't even want them." Summer crept in like a slow exhale. The tulips we planted bloomed, pink, orange, streaked with white. The dog we'd talked about getting turned into a reality, a rescue mutt named Penny who barked at squirrels and chewed up every slipper she could find. We built a little life around that chaos, the kind that felt simple and whole. But then in July, I got another letter. This one was different. It wasn't from Marla. It wasn't from my dad. It was from Bree. Her handwriting was small, neat. Careful. It started with, "You probably don't want to hear from me. And I wouldn't blame you." I almost stopped reading right there. But I kept going. She wrote about how she was 12 that winter with the coats. How she didn't realize at the time what was really going on. How she thought I just didn't like her, that I was cold and angry all the time. "I've thought about it a lot over the years," she wrote. "And I know now that you were just trying to survive." She said Marla had turned out to be a difficult mother to her, too. That Anika hadn't spoken to her in years. That their perfect little family had fallen apart long before the eviction. "I guess I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she wrote. "I wish I'd known then. I wish someone had stood up for you. I hope you're doing okay." I folded the letter and sat with it for a long time. Bree had never been cruel. Just oblivious. Just a child in a toxic house. I didn't know if I'd respond. Maybe one day. But for now, I tucked the letter into the same drawer where I kept my dad's apology. Not out of spite. Out of peace. The letter from Bree stirred something unexpected in me, not bitterness, not sadness. Just a kind of strange validation. Proof that I hadn't made everything up in my head, that the loneliness I carried for so long had been real and visible, even to those who didn't fully understand it at the time. I didn't write back. Not right away. But I didn't throw it away either. A few weeks later, Jonah and I were hosting a small cookout. A few neighbors, a couple friends from work. Penny was doing her usual rounds, begging for scraps like she hadn't been fed in weeks. It was a warm late August afternoon, and the sky was a soft blue that made everything feel easier. That was when I got the text. Dad, Marla left. She took the car. Left a note. I'm on my own. I showed Jonah, who raised an eyebrow. Did you expect that? He asked. Honestly, I said, I'm surprised it took her this long. He smiled, then turned back to the grill like he'd just been told someone forgot to bring ketchup, not that the man who'd raised me and failed me was now officially alone. I didn't respond to the text. Again, not out of cruelty. Just out of peace. Clarity. I had no desire to be the one he leaned on now that he had no one else. That chapter was closed. But it didn't mean I wasn't going to have the last word. That fall, Jonah and I were doing some minor renovations on the house. We hired a local contractor. Small crew. They were good people, reliable, respectful. The kind of workers who didn't talk down to me when I asked questions about beams or tile. One afternoon, one of the guys mentioned offhand that they'd just wrapped up a big job in Johnstown, some low-income housing project. New government-subsidized apartment complex, he said. Mostly seniors and folks on disability. Nothing fancy, but it's clean. I raised an eyebrow. Is it off Route 30? I asked. He nodded. I knew exactly where it was. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting in front of my computer, sipping tea, when the idea came to me. It started as a joke. Something small. Petty even. But then it grew. I created a fundraiser on one of those crowdsource platforms. I titled it Winter Warmth Project and described it as a drive to provide quality winter coats and supplies to struggling families and individuals in need, specifically targeting upstate New York. I made it personal. I told the story about the winter I asked for a coat and was told no, only to watch my stepmother and her daughters show off matching ones a week later. I told people I knew what it meant to be overlooked, to be pushed aside in your own home. I didn't name names, didn't call out my father or Marla directly. But the truth was baked into every line. I used the platform to partner with a local women's shelter and a children's nonprofit. Every donation would go directly toward purchasing coats, boots, and warm clothing for kids in foster care or those living in shelters. And I launched it. At first, it just trickled in, $10 here, $20 there. Then someone on Twitter picked it up. A local journalist reached out. The story spread like wildfire. By mid-November, we had raised over $14,000. We used some of the funds to buy coats from a small business in Glens Falls, a women-owned company that made them in bulk for shelters. We delivered over 200 coats that month alone. And I made sure to send the very first drop-off to the new housing complex in Johnstown. Box after box, each one marked Winter Warmth Project, handed over to the coordinator of the Community Resource Office. I didn't go in person, but I didn't need to. I knew. Jonah and I celebrated that night with takeout and champagne. I hope he sees the boxes, he said. I hope he remembers telling me no, I replied. And then watching someone else laugh in my face. It wasn't about cruelty. I didn't wish him harm. But I wanted him to see what I had done, not in spite of him, but without him. That I had taken the cold I grew up in, and turned it into warmth for someone else. That I had become the woman I needed back then. A week before Christmas, I got a card in the mail. Just a plain card. No glitter. No stickers. No long-winded apology. Just a short note in familiar handwriting. I saw the boxes. I knew right away. You built something beautiful. You always deserved better. I'm sorry, Dad. I stared at the card for a long time. Then I set it down on the table and walked into the kitchen, where Jonah was stirring something on the stove. He looked at me. You okay? I nodded. Yeah. I think I am. We ate dinner. We watched a movie. Penny curled up between us, snoring softly. Outside, the snow had started again, gentle and quiet, blanketing everything in sight. This time, I was warm. And I wasn't alone.